That's where we begin tonight here on the Hill with one of the top officials in the Harris campaign. He is Quentin Fulks, Principal Deputy Campaign Manager. Quentin, thanks for the time. You squeezed us in this evening. It is always nice to have you here on the Hill. Appreciate it. Busy day down there in Georgia, as I know.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's start with issue number one, which is the economy, people's pocketbooks, your bank account. We know what Vice President Harris would do on taxes if she becomes president. On the business side, she wants to raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, but we don't. There's a lot of gaps to be filled in on the individual side. For example, we know she wants to raise the child tax credit. She wants to broaden the earned income tax credit. That's for lower wage workers. And for those who get their health care through Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, she wants to give a tax break too. That, though, Quentin, adds up to basically 90 million taxpayers. There's 162 million tax filers in this country. So what about the other 70 million? It's the individual portion of taxes, Quentin. Does she want to keep the Trump tax cuts in place for individuals, raise them, or cut them?
Look, I'm not going to get into any specific policy proposals that the vice president herself has not rolled out. But what I can say is that the vice president is very focused on making sure that she is putting as much money back into working class people's pocket as she possibly can, and making sure that that money that people depend on is not taken from them from greedy actors. And that's why you see her rolling out the policy proposals that she has, really going after price gouging. But again, on the tax policies that you've seen, the vice president is going to continue to develop her economic policies.
Don't people deserve to know, though?
I think that people will find out what her policies are as she rolls them out, but I'm not going to break any news on what the vice president's tax policy is before she does.
Let me ask you about the border, immigration, obviously another huge issue. The Senate bipartisan bill that was negotiated, Democrats, Republican, the White House, that Donald Trump eventually killed, as we know, or at least had huge sway over it. Kamala Harris says that she supports that. Part of that includes funding for the border wall that was already put into law, right? So the money's being spent, it was mandated. But when that money runs dry, does the vice president believe that more border walls should be built, or is she in her position, like she said in 2018, where she called the wall, quote unquote, un-American?
Look, I think that the vice president has a very humane approach to the border, and that's in stark contrast with Donald Trump. I think that that border wall portion of that bill is included in there because it was needed to build consensus to get both Republicans and Democrats to agree to that bipartisan deal, which you alluded to, Donald Trump killed. And so I think that the vice president is very focused on making sure that we get more Border Patrol agents there, that we're not separating kids from their mothers at the border and their parents, which is Donald Trump's policy on it. And so I think that the vice president would support that bill because it is the strongest, most bipartisan border bill that this country could have had. And it does not have because Donald Trump.
And what about the possibility of more wall? Or does she believe going further with that is still, quote unquote, un-American?
Look, I think that the vice president is going to make sure that she is putting the American people first in her policy when it comes to the border and the border wall. And I think that obviously it's going to take her working with congressional leadership to do it. And what I can say is that the vice president really cares about making sure that our border is secure. And so she is going to work with Congress. And so I think that those conversations are going to have to take place when the bills are being negotiated with Congress. But as you mentioned, the bill now, as it stands, does have that funding for border walls. And so I think that she said she would have supported that bill. But when that resources in that bill dry up, she's going to have to work with Congress to either get it renewed or not. And that's where that will be. But I think that's putting the cart before the horse. We have to get the vice president elected, and that's where our focus is.
She was put in charge of the root causes of migration. Republicans like to call that the quote-unquote border czar. Let's set the semantics aside. What we know are the numbers from the time the Biden-Harris administration took place up until the fall of 2023, when those negotiations started. There were nearly 6.3 million apprehensions at the southern border over the course of basically 3.5 years. Should the vice president have acted sooner in her role, and does she view that number acceptable?
Look, I think the vice president did exactly what she needed to do when it came to the border, and it's exactly what she's been doing as her time in elected office as a district attorney, going after drug cartels, making sure that they weren't doing human trafficking and bringing fentanyl into this country. As vice president, she would have supported a bill that would put more Border Patrol agents at the border to secure it. And as president, she is going to continue to do what it takes to secure the border.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.